this is unfortunate.
All right.
Mike McCarthy, done dirty by the Dallas Cowboys. Jerry Jones, who couldn't get a deal done, thus going back to Brian Schottenheimer. Mike McCarthy has decided, with one job remaining, and that being the New Orleans Saints, who, again, they've been dealing with snowstorms out there. So, cut them some slack. Only fired their coach on November 4th, but who cares about all that? Mike McCarthy has decided to pull his name out of the job opportunity with the Saints. Cliff Kingsbury did the same. It appears that Kellen Moore, the Eagles offensive coordinator, is the front runner. He had another interview with them, I believe, Monday night. And so that's the way this is trending. But Mike McCarthy, according to Tom Pelissero on the NFL Network, is focusing on the 2026 hiring cycle as opposed to this hiring cycle. So I don't know what that says about the Saints job and what people feel about the Saints job, but old Mike McCarthy is going to go ahead and sit this next year out. He did it once before, and it worked out for him. He got the Cowboys job.
It worked out.
Yeah. Wasn't that the year when he took a deep dive into analytics? And
yes.
At least that's what I told everyone.
Yes.
Just because that's like the trendy thing to do. It's like, if you're not looking at the analytics, you definitely can't be a head coach in the NFL. Which I think someone described it best. And I've always laughed when people are like, what about the analytics, all the data and analytics? Like, do people realize teams have always done this? Like they've always had data and analytics. They've always had an idea of why they're going on fourth down, why they're going on these situations. Like they've always had this. They've always scouted. They've always known how they're going to be, aggressive in certain circumstances. I mean, it makes me laugh every time. The difference is, the majority of the times, it was the head coach that used that data and analytics and used his gut and used whatever else, maybe it was his intuition, that he would feel to go for it. So it's funny. We've built out these data analytics departments, and everyone thinks it's just about going for it on fourth down. It's like, no. Or when to go for two. It's like, no, this is not just that. The data and analytics department, if anything, has been built out in franchises for scouting so that they have more metrics on players that they're scouting in the college level, at the NFL level, that they're trying to get a sense for. It's for everything as far as how they can potentially determine injuries, how they can look at other, metrics to potentially look at how a guy is going to perform. But anyway, not to get on a tangent. It's funny to me because that year he took off. Everyone's like, oh yeah, he took that deep dive into the data and analytics. He's an analytics guy now. It's like, well, all right. Does anyone remember him doing anything out of the norm over his time with the Dallas Cowboys?
Well, I mean, the end of the year plays.
Those plays, by the way, only got worse. Which, I mean, in those circumstances,
just like everybody else.
Yeah, just like everyone else.
Just like everybody else.
Was Zeke playing quarterback at one point?
No, he was snapping the ball.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, to try to win the game.
He was the
on the last play of the game.
Analytics, man.
What did the analytics say about New Orleans' chances of winning this year?
I actually go to the Magic 8 Ball for that one. It says unlikely.
Yeah, they're in salary cap hell, correct? Because there's some talk that they're not in a good position cap-wise as well, too, which is why. Because, I mean, that division feels like,
it's still up for grabs.
I mean,
Tampa's like the one right now, but, I mean, who else will get it?
Atlanta, if Michael Penix develops, but that's a question mark. Yeah,
they do got good personnel though in Atlanta. Saints, no.
You got Derek Carr.
Saints, no.
I mean, that's something.
Carolina, do they improve? Who, New Orleans is?
Yeah, New Orleans, the Titans, and the Giants are last to in odds to win the Super Bowl next year.
I'm surprised they all survived, but I mean, keeping it Saints-centric, what is there to be positive about if you're a Saints fan? If you're someone in the Saints organization, does Kellen Moore
What do you mean we're going to be there next week? You don't think people in New Orleans are excited about it?
Yeah, who dey?
I mean, that has nothing to do with their team.
Who dey?
Their city.
Who dey?
Who dey thinks going to beat them Saints?
Oh, no. They're a long ways away from that. They're a long way away from that.
I mean,
Who dey?
I just don't know. I think that it's a legitimate question at this point. Who they? Like,
what? Like, who are they?
yes. I think it's a legitimate question. It ain't for winning, and it's a little ways away from Drew Brees and them boys. I just don't know. Who are they?
I got a question about the analytics stuff you brought up, Brady. From coaches that are still around, does any coach get the information from his analytics guy nowadays and just be like, yeah. Hey, pipe down, geek. So we're going for it. like we're going for it. Like, I understand what you're saying. Like,
here's the problem is I think most likely the analytics geek is telling the coach to always go for it. And he's more often than not probably looking at back at the kid going, yeah, pipe down, kid. Because your model that you always say, oh, just go for it. Yeah, 4th and 8. Yeah, go for it. Yep, the fourth and 4, go for it. Go for it. I mean, it's kind of becoming a running joke. Have you ever seen where it doesn't say to go for it on the ESPN graphic they put on the bottom line?
Right.
It almost always says go for it. It's like, unless it's so obvious, like 4th and 15 on your own 20, no, you're going to punt on this one. Like, they don't even put it up because it's so obvious. So there's this idea that, yeah, like anytime it's plus 50 and any point in time in the game, it's 4th down, just go for it. That's what the analytics say. Any coach will tell you there's a couple things that play that is not ever factored in. And at least the analytics people can say this, but when you interject into the game and you decide to do that and you don't get it, and you don't do that enough, you know what happens? You get your ass fired. That's how this works. Like, so it's all good in theory. And I've always felt like as much as you want to have all this data and analytics, each event is independent of the other, meaning there are so many variables. I don't know how your data and analytics, as far as when you should go or not, because if you're applying, for example, the situation of that 4th and 4 on the plus 35, depending on the timing of the game, in that game, that scenario, not every single matchup on the offensive line and D line is the same in that scenario. Not even throughout the course of the game. You can have injuries, you can have other things that play a factor. So if you're looking at like your success rate, expected value, whatever other math term you want to look at, or the win probability and how going for it will affect that, you're not factoring in all the variables that could have changed in that moment. Who's on the field, who's banged up, who's not, that given week, that given game, what the matchups are up front. Obviously, the weather is going to factor into some of those things too if they're not playing in a dome, and depending on the weather. Like, there's all these little things, and everyone's going to say in their model, like, no, we've got some of that built in. It's like, you can't be exact because only a coach is down on the field looking at his players, talking to his players, knowing what some of the guys are battling through. That might be banged up, that might have injuries, or they might have other things going on in their matchup, or they're telling them something else. So that analytics person is just looking at a piece of paper based on everything they've crunched going into the game. Once you get in the game, it's a completely different battle. And so I think more often than not, coaches probably turn back or like, yeah, no, I'm going to punt, or I'm going to kick the field goal here. I'm not going for it. And this is why. Where I think analytics geeks just are like, because what's their, I mean, like, what's the downside? Like, are they ever going to get an award for telling them to punt? Probably not, right? They're probably going to be more appreciated when they tell them to go forward or do this there, or this is the time to do this.